There we go. And I'm going to also put a link to the agenda in the chat. We really don't have much of a formal agenda today, but we have some. And I'm going to also put a link to the agenda in the. Sorry about that. That was weird. I've never done live streaming before, so suddenly the YouTube popped up and I heard an echo of myself. Okay, yeah, so welcome to the LD4 Rare Materials Affinity Group meeting. Thanks for joining us. I think I see quite a few people who have not regularly attended our meetings in the past, or may have occasionally. Everyone's welcome if it's your first time, or if you've attended many. This is great to see so many folks here. So first, just wanted to start out with a brief overview of what our group is. Most of the information you can find on our GitHub page, which I will also put the link in the chat. So it gives kind of a lot of the background, what we've been working on, and so on. I should have introduced myself. I'm Christine DeZeller-Tiedemann at the University of Minnesota Libraries. I'm one of the co-conveners. Paloma Graciani-Picardo from the Harry Ransom Center is the other co-convener. And so yeah, we've been in existence for a couple of years now. This group came out of the LD4P2 grant project. So several people from institutions who participated in that project wanted to continue our conversation and our exploration of linked data for rare materials. And if you were at our session yesterday, the BibFrame template session that we did yesterday, you'll know that a lot of our work in the last year has been on developing a proof of concept rare materials, rare books profile in Synodia, which is the linked data tool that was platform that was developed as part of LD4P. So see, maybe I don't know. Paloma, do you want to stop sharing your screen? Or yeah, there we go.
Less distracting.
A little bit, yeah. Maybe it's just me. I'm easily distracted. Let me see. So generally, just a little bit more about the group for those who haven't been attended previously. We generally meet about once a month. We have had a number of different guest speakers. You can find those. Let's see. Talking about different linked data topics. I'm going to show kind of a list of what we've done in the past. So we've had speakers on different linked data projects, wiki data projects, and other things like that. We've also had joint meetings or with other LD4 affinity groups or co-meetings, as the case may be. We did have a joint meeting in May with the relatively new art and design affinity group. We really have a lot of crossover interest with that group, so that was a great meeting. And so we're just looking, forward looking at doing more of that. I think, based on the feedback we've gotten on our session from yesterday on our template, certainly we're going to continue that development, and so I think that will be probably be a big focus of going forward. But we also want to continue having inviting people to come and talk about their projects as well, and then continuing to have cross conversations with the other affinity groups. Anything else I should say, Paloma?
No, I think you cover everything. We also have a form to suggest topics and topics or people that we would like to invite to talk about the project. So I'm just going to put the link on the chat, and we will definitely welcome your suggestions for future programming of the group.
Yes. So we have a few sort of discussion prompts, which but I think before we get to that, maybe we want to ask if just anyone wanted to say anything about why they're interested in this group, why questions for us. If you were at our session yesterday, if you know any sessions related or any questions related to that or any feedback related to that you weren't able to give them, anything that just kind of open it up. Okay, if not, I don't know, Paloma, did you want to lead the next portion? We didn't really, we realized, you know, an hour ago that we didn't really have an agenda. So we're kind of doing this on the fly a little bit here today.
We are going to recycle some of the prompt questions that we had for our affinity group on LD4 last year, because there's so many new people that joins because it's LD4. So it will be interesting to hear from everybody. These are very basic questions, but just to break the ice and get the conversation started. So the first question, which is in the agenda, and I will also copy it in the chat, based on what you know, what do you see as advantages and disadvantages to moving toward linked data for rare materials description compared to legacy methods? And I'm going to put it on the chat.
Feel free to raise your hand or unmute or put it in the chat. Yes, because I guess everybody does have access to the chat, so that's fine. Okay. In our Sinopia template, thanks, Nate wrote a question. In your Sinopia templates, are you using the RBMS vocab and related terms at id.loc.gov? Now, Paloma can correct me if I'm wrong, is I think we intend to, but that was too late breaking for us to incorporate it into this version. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the issue with incorporating it into the Sinopia templates is that there is not yet QA service for those vocabularies. So we are waiting for that to happen, and as soon as that's there, we will be using the QA service. Right now, people are welcome to copy and paste the URIs.
But yes, that would be our goal, definitely.
Thank you for Zoe for clarifying QA question authority.
Yeah, and real quick, Catherine does ask a good question. Sorry, Bonnie, we will get to you soon. Do you all have a preference for chatting here or in Slack? My preference would be Slack because it is documented. It will not go away.
Okay, that's fair. And that is consistent with how the preference for this conference, so we'll do that. I tend to default to chat just because it's right there, but yes, yes, we will, and then we will copy things from.
Yeah, as the host, are you able
chat
to turn off chat?
Yes, and that would be me.
And while we figure out this, Bonnie, I see that you have your hand up. So feel free to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Paloma, and welcome everybody. As a rare book cataloger for a few years here, I did want to say that this is a really wonderful exercise that we're doing in the LD4 community, because it brings us an awareness of the complexity of our end product. And a lot of us, we're just so used to doing this, but by dissecting the whole picture, the bibliographic record, the item, the holdings, the this, the that, we begin to see there are many, many special characteristics for rare materials. For example, a limited edition statement. It might be in every single book, unnumbered, that was printed. On the other hand, you have something unique and special. So we have to take a look at the whole picture. The other thing is, not everyone is going to have access to traditional methods. And I think by having more of the linked data available, someone can click on the link and get more information about that individual or whatever it is. And I think it is going to be an educational process. I would like to see us slowly but surely beginning to engage with other communities. And I think we have already with the art community. That is a wonderful beginning. There are two other communities I see that we can pay attention to, and one is the music community, and the other is law, because each of those types of materials has very special characteristics. And now I shall be a little bit quiet and listen to what others have to share. Thank you. I'll pass that to Ryan. Ryan, I see your hand.
Thanks. I didn't know if you all wanted to circle back to Slack or something before I speak, because I think there's content there before I raise my hand.
I will just quick say, please, sorry, we left the chat open and we can't close it now, but please, if you can put your text questions in the Slack, so we can keep those for longevity.
Well, the thing I wanted to say, or an observation I wanted to make, it was curious yesterday to hear in the Ex Libris session to have a representative from Ex Libris say that whatever they're doing, the result is that catalogers can now spend more time focusing on rare and unique collections, special collections material. And they didn't exactly say why. And so then my mind went off on these catastrophe scenarios about AI cataloging and all sorts of things. But if anyone has that missing piece of information, I would love to hear it. Like, what is it about moving to linked data that allows us more time to focus on rare materials?
Yeah, I was not at the session, but we are an Ex Libris library, so I have heard Ex Libris sales pitches for years, and that's what it feels like. This is totally opinion. I'm not speaking as a representative of my employer. That I feel that is often given as a sales pitch, because that's administrators want to hear it saves time. I don't see that there's evidence that it is a time saver. It definitely has, advantages and potential really great things that can happen as a result of linked data, as I think we all believe if we're attending this conference. But I don't, as far as being an efficiency or a time saver and freeing up time for other work, I don't really personally buy into that. But I was not in the session, so I did not hear exactly in what context they said that. And others who have other views, feel free to chime in.
I do want to bring in some stuff from the Slack, but I'm sure we all have some opinions on ex libris related to special collections. So please continue stewing on that and maybe post about it in the chat. But Catherine Chandler wrote, my concern to this question is, are people who are serious traditional bibliographers involved in the discussions for linked data? Because they may not be tied into the linked data communities. In fact, I know for a fact that many or most of them are not, and they could add a great deal to these discussions. And since I'm already speaking, I will kind of respond to that a little bit. And I think, yeah, at this moment, I think, especially, I guess, the serious traditional bibliographers, probably maybe some, but I think most are not involved in these discussions. And I think that is the hard part for these discussions, is involving the people who need to be involved. And I think we will never be able to involve everyone the way we would like to. And we are trying to increase, I think, involvement through sessions like this, through kind of leaving up the forum for people to give feedback and to try to present on this as much as possible. And even then, we're not going to reach everyone. And I think what that indicates is that this needs to be, as I think many people have heard in various contexts, it needs to be an iterative process. And I think that also helps kind of the nature of the BibFrame ontology, and that is extensible. I think ARM, the art and materials ontology, is going to end up, I think, being extensible, and it's going to probably have to undergo some revisions based on continual feedback. And I think this also it just indicates it all takes time from the various other things that we are asked to do, that even those bibliographers are asked to do. And I think there is a tension there, and it's hard to find time to do all that we want to do. So that's not necessarily an answer, but that is, I guess, my perspective on it.
Oh, the next comment we had, which I pasted into Slack, but it was not me, it was Sue Tyson who put that into the chat. As I've heard that linked data would be essential for enabling discovery of materials regardless of vocabulary used, as in if someone wants to use an alternate vocabulary instead of LCSH to search for something, linked data will guide users to that resource. It would be so useful for reparative cataloging, among other things. Yes. Good comment. I think there's, there are more and more support for using a variety of vocabularies. I think we've had good presentations on Homosaurus, for example. I think that's one of the most widely adopted ones that I know of in libraries. And the idea being that there should be interconnections between these. What else want to? But then Allison is sort of on similar topic. Relatedly, what happens with authority work in a linked data world? Have there been any thoughts about this? I think it, like so many things, it becomes more of identity management as opposed to just having one single authority file. That is, it is more of linkages between them, and so, for example, having these may be very simplified examples, but it's just kind of the way I think us often think in practical terms. In Wikidata, having LCA, Library of Congress name authority file identifiers in Wikidata and vice versa. All that cross pollinations of these large aggregators that so it becomes more complex. Again, it allows for a lot more machine, to manipulate this stuff and digest this stuff at large scales, but it also makes everything more complicated.
I will just see that Allison Rich also commented getting maps, cartographic catalogers in on the discussion as yeah, there are very specialized fields included in map
Sure.
records.
Yeah.
And that is kind of why we started with rare books, because that is like where most of our wheelhouses are. And I think once we branch into other formats, we are going to need to, I think, probably proactively reach out to folks with that kind of specialization.
Yeah, Joe Sarah has a comment. Yeah, this is a great comment. I think it's difficult to involve both experienced catalogers and people pushing for using linked data because each group claims not to understand enough about the other's expertise. There needs to be an increase in discussions bringing these groups together. I hate the idea that each group gets farther apart based on what they think they know about the other group's views. Yeah, I feel that a lot. I struggle with the technical side of it. I mean, I've kind of forced myself to be in this world because I think it's really interesting and I think and very important. But I sometimes, yeah, I I feel out of my depth in a lot of the technical side of things and the coding side of things. And yeah, continuing having us work closer together, I think is important. To Ryan.
Yeah, sort of on that note, I was wondering about something like inviting Jeff Mixter from OCLC to a Bibliographic Standards Committee meeting. So, I mean, there are a lot of, not that they should be here, there are a lot of people that I don't see here that I wish I did see here for their perspectives, and yesterday, especially during that meeting, and they're not going to come to this meeting. Maybe we should invite this content to BSC more readily. And someone like Jeff, I think he did a really great job at sort of hinting about what the reasons why we're doing this, which frankly to me have been missing for 10 years. Like, I know that we're supposed to go to linked data. I'm only now starting to really understand the compelling reasons for doing so. And I feel like if that's how I'm experiencing it, then probably a lot of other people are too. Anyway, the important thing there was, yeah, the important point I wanted to make was let's invite people to our meetings.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would just say, if you're thinking of Rare Materials Affinity Group meetings specifically, I think Paloma shared that form for suggesting a speaker. It's also on our GitHub landing page. If you're thinking of the Rare Books and Manuscript section, Bibliographic Standards Committee specifically, I would say email me and Jennifer. We are the co-chairs of the Bibliographic Standards Committee, for those who don't know. So I'm involved in multiple related things, but yes, definitely suggest speakers, because I think, we should also, in general, we should be proactively reaching out, but sometimes we don't always have the same perspective or ideas of who to reach out to. So yeah, this is for everyone. Please suggest people who should be involved, and even if they can't be long-term involved, they can, attend, one meeting and provide their perspectives during that meeting.
Yeah, and then there's a continuing conversation in Slack with about about like we need to talk to each other more, and we have people from more the cataloging side of the house and the linked data having more linked data experience. And yeah, that's Joe asks a good question. Do we start with basic linked data or do you teach me about rare materials cataloging? Good question. I'm not sure I know the answer, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess in my own response to kind of what Sarah said, I guess it depends on like the goals in general. Like the goal of the collaboration. Like, I mean, this group is rather open. I would say, yeah, I guess that is quite a hard question to answer. Okay, maybe I stop talking, need to think a bit more.
I mean, following up on Joe's comment on Slack, I think that that has been a challenge of this group, because yes, it is rare materials, but as we are trying to talk about linked data, we don't know as much about linked data. So it feels like we ourselves need to be educated on linked data so that we know how to put forward efforts for rare materials to be accounted for. So there's a little bit of both things of like, we need to learn more about linked data. We need to know where exactly how the changes are going to affect the way that we describe unique materials, and how can we leverage those and then bring them out and be like advocate for that. So for instance, the B-frame templates, which are a proof of concept, our goal is also to present them on the B-frame European workshop that is happening on September. So getting ourselves into the discussions where like B-frame is being discussed, so that for any decision that is being made in terms of tools, systems, data transformation pipelines, our needs are also being taken into account. And so I see that you have your hand up for a while.
Oh, hi, thank you. I was just following up on so I was the one who asked about reparative cataloging and using linked data for it. And I am an absolute newbie, so maybe this is just a ridiculous question, but I'm having trouble visualizing how that would actually even be done. Like, you know, when I first heard of it, I was involved with this it's called the California State University Japanese American Digitization Project. And one of the central things behind it, it's a digital site that's gathering digitized materials concerning the incarceration of Japanese Americans in World War II from like campuses all over California. And, you know, there's LC subject headings, which are very much euphemistic, very problematic to describe this period of history. And so part of the project was scholars got together and started talking about that, the need to not use euphemistic Library of Congress headings in describing these things. So we adopted the Densho vocabulary, the Densho, you know, organization in Seattle, where instead of saying, you know, talking about evacuation, you talked about mass removal in your subject headings. But we had a conference and people were like, well, linked data is the key. But I don't know what that looks like. So maybe it's just something I just need to see. And so my question was, are there any instructional materials for actually funneling, no matter what terminology you're using, from what thesaurus to particular resources? So if someone says evacuation, they get to the same place as someone who's used the Densho headings, if that makes sense.
I can only speak to my own perspective on how this might happen. Some libraries I think may be doing this or something like this. But I think a lot of it depends on having hubs of things like same as, or maybe not quite same as, but better pseudo equivalency concepts that connect terms, and that will connect the maybe Library of Congress subject heading to a Densho vocabulary heading. I don't know if they have something like that, and then making use of those hubs in a kind of discovery interface. I can also imagine in some kind of cataloging interface, being able to easily navigate to those kind of hubs where you can see all of the different terms that are roughly equivalent all in the same place and being able to pick from one. I can imagine it happening both from the discovery side and then also possibly from the metadata creation side, kind of again using those the hubs that will collocate identifiers for concepts that are maybe roughly equivalent but have different labels, or collocating labels under different labels under a single identifier. And I see Paloma has her hand up.
Edith, I was just going to say basically what you're saying, Zoe, but I understand Sue's question, because I think that what we are missing is that discovery layer that actually allows you to see it. So we can have this concept of how it's going to be, and for instance, now we can work in Sinopia and we can do all these connections, but we don't get to see how that actually is benefiting the end user yet. You can play with the Sparkle and figure out like, okay, I'm going to be querying this data set, but I only want to retrieve from this data set the things that my library wants to retrieve. So if I know that the Library of Congress subject heading it's problematic, my Sparkle can not target the Library of Congress subject heading and what it is. It queries one that has been developed by a different institution or something like that. It's just like we don't have the system yet, and that's probably that also will address a bunch of the questions that are coming up, that have been coming up about like how do we learn if we don't have like how things actually are supposed to look.
Thank you, both of you. That was so super helpful, both of you. Thank you. And I agree, like I'm kind of visual and tactile, and I am kind of like, I get it intellectually, but then it's like, how in the world do we actually implement this? Or yeah. So I appreciate both of you talking about what you're saying, because I that does help.
Ryan?
Yeah, relating to that, there's a question in Slack about what does this all mean for authority work? And I think that we're basically talking about the same thing. And I have that same question. And I would love to hear others' thoughts on that. I guess it's sort of moving from traditional authority work to more of entity management work. And what does that look like?
Exactly. I feel like it's a bit unclear what it will look like because, work has already been widely distributed. I think different types of authorities maybe had previously been siloed in different silos, in different, authority files or databases or whatever. And then connecting them is a big part. People talk about Wikidata as a big identifier hub. And that's, I think, one of the big strengths of Wikidata. And then the question is, how do we make use of those hubs? And again, it comes back to the discovery problem. Like we need to be able to configure discovery layers, discovery methods to take advantage of those hubs that in many cases, like Wikidata, already exist, and be able to, leapfrog or whatever to, from one identifier to another, and then from within an identifier to go into the label to that identifier to pull information using that identifier. And we do not have, I think, widely dispersed methods to do that. And again, when actually doing authority work, like knowing other contexts in which that authority work might be used, you know, if you make a NACO record, it might not just be used there. That information might eventually downstream, you know, be used elsewhere. And it's kind of, now we have to think about where else will data be used, or where can we use data that it already exists elsewhere and easily be able to pull that into our own authority work. And I think, yeah, that is the problem with things being so distributed. It's kind of like, what is even happening? in some ways, it's you know, what is happening where, and where do we fit into all of this? And again, that's not exactly an answer, but that's how I think about it. And I think, yeah, that is the problem with the discovery gap, is that we still don't totally have all the tools for that.
I would like to make a plug here to the program for cooperative cataloging, because it is doing a great work are trying to figure out and how that movement looks like at the community level. So I think that I had not been as involved with PCC before, but I started seeing PCC as, if I want to move towards linked data, that's going to be a community move, and it has to be, and that's the community that I think is doing a great job at moving in that direction. So I put on Slack the link to the PCC Identity Management Advisory Committee, who is currently working on some sort of like a roadmap of what that's going to look like. So I think that another point here is that we cannot be like siloed on ourselves, like, well, we are like the rare materials community and we need to like figure it out all ourselves. It's like, what are other communities doing? How do we insert ourselves also in those communities to make sure that we are being heard? And also another plug for work that the PCC, the program for cooperative cataloging, is doing with linked data training. And that will be available at some point, and it can be leveraged for, like, there's going to be support. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I said there's been, yeah, great ongoing discussion in Slack as well. Joe Sarah is talking about convincing catalogers to you know, do this work, and often they do not really have either the institutional support or the time within their jobs to do this, which I think is very, very true. And it also goes back to the discovery piece. Is like, I know I can just speak from my own experience where I work at a large, you know, research one university, well-resourced compared to many others. And I'm allowed to do this work as my professional development, but I don't really get any support in trying to implement it like in our actual work. It is not part of the work that we do as our regular work, just because there is no, again, we're missing the broad, you know, aggregated examples of how this can, you know, would actually work in our workflow and our discovery in a practical way. Or it's, well, we're on Ex Libris, they're, you know, implementing linked data stuff into their suite, and once that gets integrated, we'll do more with it. But we're not positioning ourselves as leaders, you know, as an institution in linked data. So yeah, that's been a struggle.
Yeah,
Ryan?
Ryan?
Following up on that, it's interesting to consider like what should we even be doing right now? There are a lot of discussions at my campus about, well, we could add the URI to that, and then someone else will say, oh no, that's going to be automated later. And then we say, how do you know that? And then it gets into this really fuzzy area. So I'm curious to know what people are doing right now to better prepare, if anything.
One of the things that we are doing in our library is an Ex Libris library. The Have Ransom Center, we are now on Alma Primo. We don't have the resources to implement linked data until the systems that we use come with a linked data functionality. So one of the things that it's going to be fundamental is having clean data. So like we have been working on looking at the MAT records and making sure that our data is clean and consistent. And we are going to start looking at the transformation that Ex Libris is doing, just play around with it. Ex Libris is doing between Mark and BFrame, and learn a little bit more about what our system is going to be able to provide eventually. They also have on the roadmap having Wikidata integration. So another way of preparing is reconciling vocabularies with Wikidata items so that then you can test how that data is being retrieved and portrayed in knowledge cards. So I think that probably just leveraging what you have at this point. And Wikidata is a great resource because it is open and it is free and everybody can contribute. And I think that it helps to get your hands dirty with linked data, but it's like very, very lower hanging fruit. And it also allows you to understand linked data.
And that is something that we have been doing, playing around with Wikidata. And one of those questions, well, will that be automated, is so once we create an item, do we then add the URI for that item to the authority record? Does anybody know if that is worthwhile work to be doing? Usually the URI or the identifier for the authority record is added to the Wikidata item because we're using it to support information in the Wikidata item. But I don't know if it's worthwhile to go the other way.
So there was a pilot of the program for cooperative cataloging to put URIs in MARC, and there might be some recommendations coming out of that. But that's a great question, Ryan, and that I think that what we need is the use cases. Why would we want to put it? And is it better to do it programmatically or by hand? I mean, like manually, and why and why will be the reason to have it there?
The reason to put a URI to an authority record on something is to establish that level of authority, and somebody coming along later can then rely on it more heavily because they know that someone else has done the work to say, yeah, this is that authority, or this has this relationship to that authority. And the weight of links between and among resources is what allows you to assign trust to things.
But the question is, if you do it manually, you know that somebody has actually verified. If you do it in batch programmatically, what is the level of trust that you can have?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my own opinion on that is like if you're doing it manually, then it's you definitely have confirmed that these are equivalent in some senses, and especially I would say if you are already doing the manual work to create a Wikidata item, then it would, I mean, I feel like it would make sense to do one more step and add to the authority record, but it's, I know it's not always as simple as that, depending on who is doing which part of the work.
And Carly put into Slack that she thinks this was discussed recently on a listserv, maybe the PCC Wikidata listserv. Haven't been able to pinpoint it, but perhaps if people want to look back at some recent list discussion archives and see if they can find it. But yeah. But yeah, I definitely think this we need to be talking to each other, and as like Joe was saying, move outside our comfort zone. So it's saying this is part of why I do this work, that it is, a lot of it is very far outside my comfort zone, and I sometimes feel at sea, but I think it's important to, yeah, not just talk to catalogers or just talk to rare book catalogers even. And I know this is an anecdotal example, but I know that many rare book catalogers or all kinds of catalogers have had the experience where the folks managing their discovery layers, and this is not at all slam on our IT folks who do great work that I'm not able to do. From our perspective, you're taking away the ability to search this element, or why can't we display this? Why can't we search this? And they'll come back with evidence. Well, nobody searches it. We have the user logs, and it becomes this sort of adversarial thing where a richer conversation might help both of us understand, like, why is this important? Why is this important to the users of our resources, even if they make up a small percentage of the overall users of the system? To these researchers, this is a key point of information and evidence. And then on the other hand, we have to also be aware of and acknowledge the limitations of the systems we have, and they doesn't always take advantage of all our bells and whistles. And maybe we can together come with some create some other solutions or some alternatives of how to get at this information together, once if they understand what our end goal is, and not just that we want every little thing, detail to show up in the records.
I'll just highlight something else Joe Sarah said in Slack. He says, I have found the institutional repository to be a good place to explore these things. Our institutional repository is MARC-based, but we don't have the restrictions to adhere completely to MARC standards. We approach it more from the close enough idea, with a focus on how it will be consumed by users or applications. It provides for some interesting conversations with catalogers that I wouldn't have had in any other position in the library. And I think that's a really good point about IR metadata. And yeah, it doesn't even, depending on your repository software, it won't even have the same kind of technical limitations that a lot of integrated library systems and associated discovery layers have, depending. I don't mean to keep talking, but I guess
Oh, thank you for talking.
well, it's because of the folks who are talking in Slack, who you know, they're doing the real ideas there. But I think the point of one kind of thread that I'm seeing, and I think Allison Rich says it more explicitly, there will be a big divide between the haves and the have-nots. And I think this just speaks to the fact that we need to find a way or better ways to kind of scale up a lot of this work, a lot of the automated work, so that it's not something that depends on like your institution having enough money to be able to, you know, automatically add URIs or to automatically make whatever other changes, and to have, you know, overarching, you know, I won't say necessarily a group like this, but at least like this group is kind of, we're kind of a community of multiple institutions, you know, trying to find something that will work for a larger group of people. And similarly, I think in many of these efforts, it will require these larger like consortia, basically, you know, to put together some of this work, especially since like all of this data, like, I mean, I don't want to say vendors because, you know, they're vendors, but at least vendors, they have access to many institutions. They have access, they know how their technology works, you know, and in some ways they're able to do things at scale. And I think we just need to find better ways to do this work at scale and to support, you know, smaller and less resource institutions in this work, so that they don't get, you know, left behind or forced to do things on their own. Because I mean, that's the point of being a community, is to be able to support each other in this.
And I see Ryan is asking on Slack about Library Use Academy. And I did the linked data courses, and they were excellent. They were really good. I really learned about what
I did as well.
linked data is. So I will definitely recommend it.
Yeah. I will say that, you know, as much as I claim that I don't know anything about this stuff when I'm at sea, but actually those were very helpful, and I probably got me a lot further than I would have been otherwise.
Yeah, I would recommend all of, I think it's Robert Chavez. His last name is Chavez. All of his work, it's excellent. And like also it just gives you PDFs, you know, a lot of it, you get a full PDF and you can keep it, and it has exercises and it walks you through things. So I really recommend those. Obviously it's extra learning work on top of our other jobs, but I do think it was very beneficial.
Is it fairly hands-on?
I would say so, in the sense that there are many exercises. Like everything is, you know, you go through an exercise, you read it, and then you do the exercise, and then you will like submit work. From memory, it's less interactive in the sense that I think everything was asynchronous. But I think there was a Slack group where you could ask questions. But in terms of like actively like doing things, like I set up my own triple store somehow. I don't remember how I did it, but it has you set up your own triple store, and then you're querying your triple store. It has you learn how to query out to like external Sparkle endpoints. So in that way, it's very hands-on. And I still have the documentation that I can go back to when I need to remind myself of all of that, because I definitely do. And I also love Joe's most recent point, which is kind of what I was thinking of trying to say, that speaking of our libraries, making space for important things, wouldn't it be great if the at-scale efforts came out of pooled library efforts and resources created by people in libraries instead of relying on vendors to do the work and make the libraries pay for the result. I wonder what he could be talking about. But I totally agree. It's just, I feel like the idea of it is so big and so difficult. Like I wouldn't even know where to start, but like I feel like that's what we need to do. I just don't know how.
Well, I think that's maybe a good note to end on. We're almost at time. So before we sign up, thank you again for a really, really great, wide-ranging conversation with lots of questions, no real answers, but that's the nature of what we're doing. I just put into the chat again, this is the Google group for this affinity group. So please, if you are interested in continuing the conversation, feel free to join the group. I'd say the email list is not very active at all. It's mostly us just sending out meeting announcements. But it could certainly become a space where we have discussions. But then if you are subscribed, then you would be able to yes, thank you. That's a better way to subscribe to it. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. That's okay. Invited to our meetings if you are able to attend. We do also record our meetings if you miss them. But I also hear loud and clear that we have the rare materials cataloging community also need to keep getting ourselves out there and put ourselves in other spaces as well, and not expect everyone to come to us. I think that's a great idea. Oh, and the last thing I want to say, somewhat selfishly, is that we are looking for another co-convener of this affinity group. I will be stepping down in the next few months, mostly because I am, as was mentioned, the program for cooperative cataloging. I will be starting on their steering committee starting in October, which is a huge time commitment, though I will be continuing this work at that larger, I say, broader scale as part of my intention to help the community move along. So I'm sure I will be involved in some of these areas in that role. But we would love to see anybody who's interested, and you don't even have to be a rare materials cataloging expert. Maybe you just are more interested in learning about linked data. But want to say any last words, Paloma?
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And I love to be following all the discussion that is happening on Slack. A bunch of good questions, and I think that if anybody can think of ways that we can program the meetings of this group to help the community learn more about linked data, please, what do you need? What do you think that you will need to know in order to participate on the discussion? Because that's what we are trying to do here in this group. So use the form, and I hope to be seeing many of you. We have scheduled a meeting on Thursday, but we are going to cancel because we are having this in lieu of like the one next Thursday. So our next meeting will be in August. And if you join the Google group, you will get the notifications of the meeting. So I hope to see many of you there.